So, hey, ladies and gentlemen. So, just continuing our discussion with Obinna. Today, we're going to be walking through the product that he has called XenHey. So, we're going to be focused. We're going to do a little play acting here, and I'm going to play the role of a customer who is looking to do some stuff, right? And so, Obi, you're gonna kind of walk me through what I need to do to get integrated into XenHey and to get using your product. So why don't you take it away, Obi, and walk me through XenHey by
Yeah.
first telling me what XenHey basically does. Let's start there.
All right. So XenHey is basically it's an it's a product that actually helps reduce the implementation. I'll start again. So XenHey is a product that allows you to reduce the time it takes to build out RESTful APIs in the cloud, and not necessarily just in the cloud, but if you're just building APIs on-prem, you can also use the product as well. But today we're going to focus on how we can take a serverless Azure function today and actually build out a RESTful API. And the goal of this exercise is to be able to build something very simple, very quick, with low code or no code in some situations. And we're going to focus on trying to use configuration to actually wire up some of the resources into Azure. So with that being said, Ed, so what we're going to focus on is that you have a request to actually have a RESTful API that allows you to put some data into a Azure table, something very simple that requires you to be able to maybe you're a client, maybe you have a gym, maybe you have a different line of business and you want to gather some information. And ultimately, you attach the form when you're ready. But for now, we just want to test the JSON payloads that will be available to post to a backend API. Okay.
Okay.
Mhm.
So what do I need to do to get going?
Right. So the first thing you got to do is, like we did in the last session, you fire up a Azure function. So we're going to go through that flow again, but it's going to be slightly different when we get to the point where you're ready to do the publishing of Azure. We're going to replace the boilerplate code as provisioned by Azure with some of the boilerplate code I'm going to provide for you that allows you to connect to XenHey.
And this is not something that just works in Visual Studio, right? If you're a person who uses Visual Studio Code, for instance, if you don't have a Visual Studio license, this is also a technology that you can use, correct?
Yes, so you can today we're focusing on Visual Studio Code and Visual Studio, but we're going to have another session that actually does the same flow in Visual Studio Code as well. So if you don't have the money to buy or a licensed product like Visual Studio, or you can get a free version. I believe the free version is out as well. But if you are comfortable in Visual Studio Code, you can also use Visual Studio Code to do exactly the same thing that we're going to do today inside of Visual Studio.
Okay, so in the interest of time, we've just gone ahead and sped the process up to get the Azure function set up. Our Azure function project is called Zen Hey Demo. We're just using a function called function one. I can rename it Zen Hey function, and then I'll just use that in here.
Yeah, we're going to be replacing the boilerplate code anyway, so you don't have to do anything here.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. So if you add, I think the first step you got to do is add a NuGet library for XenHey.
Okay.
So you bring that in. You just type in XenHey and search. I should be the only one there. And
Okay.
you bring in the 8.2 version. Install the latest. You should bring all the dependencies down as well.
Okay,
Okay.
so this is fully built now.
So what I'm going to send you a link, which is basically, I'm going to post in the chat, which is basically a code snippet that you can use to replace the boilerplate. Just grab that.
The whole thing.
Yeah. Just copy and paste it. Just replace the whole thing. If you do rebuild, it's going to take. It's going to try to. So if we click on bring in the references, so if we highlight that and bring in the library, should bring that in. Oh. There you go. Then you bring in the library for managed, for collections. I think collections is just system dot. Right. And if you scroll down all the way down, yeah, that should choose the system does or specialize. Yeah. If you scroll the way down and bring in the manage orchestration, should suggest it for you. That's it. So everything should build. What else is left? Oh, that should work. Oh yeah, it's static. Okay, so you should be good to go now. So if you do rebuild,
So right now, what's happening is, if I can just close this, move this down, is someone is going to call this service via post. The service name is going to be called message.
Right.
Some logging happens, of course.
Right.
And then whatever the body of the message that was called gets converted back into a string.
Right.
Okay. Then we call the orchestration service, which I guess is a dependency
It's
injection.
basically, yeah.
Oh, it's a get. Okay, so this will return you a managed orchestration service.
Right.
And then you call run on that, passing in the request body. And then whatever results come back from that are you then basically convert into an action result using this method called result set. Okay.
Yeah.
So what do we do next?
So basically you're set up on the coding side. You're done coding. So you don't have to do any more coding here. I mean, what we need to do now is set up the backend, which is basically in Azure. So when you build and you publish, you can go ahead and build and publish now.
Okay. So as always, when you're creating a function, you select the name, you provide the subscription it's going to be connected to, what resource group it's going to be part of, what plan you're going to be using. You need a hosting plan for it. You can think of this as the kind of machine where that function is going to be run. More high load functions, more performant functions will run in more expensive ones, low performant ones in less expensive ones. And then once you're done, it actually goes and creates that resource in Azure. First of all, that's what this process is. And then once that's done, then you can then publish your code onto the resource. That's a very common pattern that you're going to see when building Azure Functions, or really pretty much most resources on Azure. So as you can see, it's now gone and created that resource, right? And that resource exists in Azure right now. And what we're going to be doing now is publishing to it. Okay, so publishing is done. So what do we do next?
So the next step now is that we go into the storage account that was provisioned by your Azure function, and we're going to set up a container inside of that.
Okay, so I can do that.
So we look for the storage account that's associated with this function.
Okay, so that is this. Is there a way to find it through the function, or do we always have to just know?
I don't think you can. If you go into the application settings, it will show you
Okay,
the
it will show what's
URL.
associated with it. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're here. So we're going to create a new container.
Yes.
Okay. So we're going to call this XenHey.
No, this new container is going to the new container is going to be called application. And click create.
So this is a mandatory name that it has to be?
For now, yes. I'm still working on giving you options. We can discuss, I mean, outside of this recording, what the options may be, but yeah, for now it's
okay. And
mandatory.
what kind of access does it need?
It doesn't, I mean, you can keep the private access because the only person that's going to be talking to it is the Azure function.
Okay.
So now you've got that created. Now, if you go into the Server Explorer on the left side.
Storage Explorer, you mean?
Yeah, Storage Explorer, sorry. I'm sorry, Storage Explorer. Then if you open up the containers, the blob containers, you should see in there, click on application. And then you create one more folder called config.
Inside of this blob container?
Yes, yes.
Inside of the container itself?
No, inside of the application container, you create one more folder in there called blob. I mean, sorry, create one more folder in there called config. So new folder, just call it config. And when you've done that, then I'm going to send you another link, which you would save locally and you upload that into this folder. So you can leave that window open and start a new, I'm going to send you a link. Let me put it in chat. Give me a second.
Did this folder get created here?
Well, you left it. Once you leave the folder, it goes away, right? So you have to create the folder, then stay in the context of that folder, then
I don't
upload the
think
file.
I'm
Hey, do one more time.
I don't think it ever got created.
It did get created. What happens is that once you leave the container, it loses the folder because there's nothing in it.
Okay, so config. Okay.
Yeah. Here, okay.
Well, I don't see it.
It should be there. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's not in your context view. Let's try one thing. Let's try one thing before you leave that window. You don't have a file in there. You could upload the file in there. You can create the folder and upload the file, and then
Okay,
that would.
so basically, as part of uploading the file, I would create.
Yeah, you have the file. You have the file ready to upload, and what happens is that it will. Once you create the folder and upload the file, then to maintain that folder inside of that container.
Okay, so I'm gonna.
That's how that works. Yeah.
Traditional way here.
Yeah.
I'll go to containers. I'm going to go to application. And then when I do upload, I'm going to add it. So you sent me a file now?
Yeah. So if you click on the link that I sent you in chat, I just put a link in the chat. And if you do file save as or Control S, you should save that as JSON payload. So just keep the same name. We're gonna keep everything as is.
Okay.
And then the next thing you do is that you upload that JSON payload into the config folder inside of the application.
Okay.
So you can,
there we go.
should be fine, yeah.
There we go. So this is going to be called config, right?
So it's going to be config is the name of the folder. Yeah, there you go. Upload.
Okay.
So if you open up the config file, since you're in that view, click that. I click edit. So in this context now, you can decide, if you scroll down a little bit into this, we can talk through this a little bit. So there's a couple of things you can do in here to make it more personalizable. So for what you're doing, you can actually provide a key. There's a key piece there, which it says key type. If you scroll up a little bit. So where it says where it says the data flow process, there's a key there. You can actually, the key there at that first line or line 13 is used to indicate when you hit this flow inside of application insights, and we're going to use that feature. So if you want to call that Azure Table Storage and maybe call it add or something like that, so we can identify that in application settings later on. We show you how that works. So you can just, it could be a unique value. Okay, and the next thing you can do is that if you scroll down further into that storage account, you can decide what table you want to call it. I call it demo application, but if you're not comfortable with that name, you can give it any name you want to call it. So you could relate to XenHey demo if that's what you want to call it. So you can configure it that way as well. That's another thing you can do.
Okay. So what do we do next?
Once you've done that, you save it.
Okay.
So the thing you're going to do is grab where you see that JSON on top where it says config OF1. Grab that whole line up to. No, yeah, grab the whole name. You don't want the JSON. Just grab everything but the .json and the config. So you grab just the name.
Okay.
We're going to use that later on, and I'll show you where we're going to use it. We just need the GUID. We don't need anything else. We just need the GUID itself. Okay, so you grab that. We're going to use that now. So if you open up Postman, you're ready.
Okay.
And now we're going to start using the Azure function just created, and that's all it takes. So now we can start sending request payloads to this Azure function you just generated. Grab the URL. This time we're doing a post, so we don't need the question mark at the end. We get rid of the question mark. And a couple of things we're going to do is, so in the actual headers, we're going to use application content type is JSON. That's the first we're going to put in there.
Okay, isn't that taken care of here?
When you do that there, then you change that to JSON. Then check the headers. Just check the headers just to make sure that put it in there. Sometimes it doesn't. See, it didn't put it in there. No, that's
do it implicitly when you send it.
Oh, it does. Okay, so the other thing that you need
over here, you see it. You know, I don't know. I'll add it to the header.
Yeah, I always add it because sometimes it's very quirky. So application content type is application JSON. Application JSON. Yeah, that's it. Then the second thing you add in there is file name, all lowercase, one word. Then you take that GUID I gave you and paste it in there. And now what you can do, if you go into the body, you can just get a good JSON. Any good JSON that you're thinking of, it doesn't matter what the JSON is, and you can paste it in there. So you can just take any sample JSON that you may have somewhere lying around, or create one on the fly. Yeah. And maybe add like address, age, something like that. Yeah.
Okay.
Then what you can do is hit send. See what happens. Scroll down. Yeah, let me see what gives. So you were successful. So you have a row key back.
Okay.
So if we go, so now we're going to walk through what just happened. So if we go into your storage accounts,
So what are we looking for? Tables or?
Tables, Azure Tables, yes. Go to Azure Tables. Looking here on the right side here. Demo that was created for you. So you didn't have to create that. That was automatically created for you. You probably need to go to, if you go to Storage Explorer, you can access the data that way. I'm going to table storage, hit that button. So what it does is automatically creates everything for you. So it created the row key, timestamp, age, contact, and name for you. And it put in everything for you. So if you added more fields in there, to automatically create the fields for you. So you don't have to worry about generating or creating those fields for you at all. It does it for you automatically. So that's how you store data in there. Now, obviously what you put in there, which I know you said you put in a complex object in there, which is the contact. It wasn't just a name key value pair. So what it does is that it recognizes as a complex object and stores it as a string.
Okay, but what if it's an extremely complex object?
Yeah, you can, yeah. So there's a capability inside the search that allows you to call out what is a complex object. And when you're searching the data back, you can actually say, okay, the contact is a complex object, and to bring it back as a valid JSON as part of the response.
Okay, so what is it possible to add, like if I came in here and I now added, I don't know, I'm not gonna touch anything weird. So name, age, salary.
Yeah, you can add salary in there. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Good. I send that. Okay, good. So then over here now, I should now see the salary added. There you go. And then it's null there. Okay.
Yeah. So the next thing we're going to talk about is how this product is actually integrated into application insights. So
Okay.
if you go over to the application insight tab.
Okay. I never know where it is. Oh, there we go. It's a light bulb.
Right.
So which one is it?
Which one do you connect it to when you started up? Do you?
I didn't connect it to anything.
Let's check the Azure function and see which one it may be tied into. Are we going to the configuration file?
Oh, it was not turned on.
All right, so we probably need to turn that on. That's the next thing we're going to do. There you go.
So is this something that has to be enabled manually, or is it something that?
That's interesting. I mean, if there's an existing one that we're trying to leverage, we can just add that into the configuration file in the Azure function, and it should just leverage it, because all you need is the application inside GUID, and that actually will tie into that. But this is just a wizard just showing you how to tie into it and to update the config file on your behalf.
Okay.
So now we have this tied in. We'll probably have to send a couple more entries. So we have to run the actual endpoint again and just add a couple more things in there so we can capture some logs.
So just change the name, change the age, adjustment 2.
Okay, that was successful. Maybe add one more entry in there just to capture a couple of entries.
Adjustment 4, adjustment 34. Okay, we have a couple of entries in here. Okay, so we now go to the App Insights tab.
Yeah, so we're going to the Application Insights tab. Obviously, we know it takes like 5 minutes for it to produce the information.
Does XenHey already know, because when we configured it and when we published the Azure function, we didn't have any App Insights data tied to it. Does XenHey know that that there's app data, or that there's an app insights that's now connected, or is XenHey just reading the default logging that's coming from app insights?
Well, what it does is that the default login that comes from App Insight is what you get from the entry point into the function, which is just the log, right? But it also captures custom events, additional information. It uses some information from the configuration file, and that goes into App Insights as well. So once it detects that there's a valid application insights hooked up, it just start capturing information and put it in there.
Okay. Okay, so we have some data now that's come in.
Okay, so what we can do is that if we go into the performance tab, just want to see whether we have any entries in there on the left side.
Yeah, I'm on performance.
Oh, yeah, it's a little slow. Sorry. Oh man. Okay, so do we have any? So nothing has come. Do we have any entries there yet? So I think
We have one entry.
it's not showing up there yet.
We have one that's showing up right here.
Okay, let me see. Yeah, but on the operational name there's nothing that's saying 0 counts, so it hasn't recorded it yet. So if you refresh one more time. Sometimes it takes a while to come in.
Yeah, I'm seeing one. Message right here.
Oh, hold on. There we go. Now just there's a delay on your end, man. Sorry. So you have 5 messages in there. So we click on the message and you go to the overview. I think it's overall tab. We click on the message. Then on the right side, you can click on the actual samples. There's a delay, so you probably have to wait maybe 5 seconds every time you click on something, so I can see what you're doing.
Okay.
Let's see. So what have I seen on? I can see. Go to details.
Go to details.
Yeah. Which one are we looking at? This is different. I think that's. Why am I seeing something different?
See. Nice that. I'm actually going to move us to the other side because everything seems to be happening. Everything in Azure seems to happen towards the bottom right.
Yeah, there we go. Now I can see that thing. So we click on one of those durations, scroll down where it says all, and it says the entries. So the message, click on one of those guys. Then if you do view all telemetry, it's interesting, it's capturing an exception. I don't think we saw any. And if you look at it, you scroll down slowly, keep going down slowly, there should be custom events. If you click on custom events, so that's XenHey injecting itself into application insights right there.
Okay.
And if you scroll down there, you see process name is Azure Table Ed.
Yep, I see that.
Yes. So that answers your question, how it injects it. So what that does is that it's actually telling you that the process that you're actually running is running on a coloration ID, which is basically is the coloration ID is the transaction scope of the entire process. So you had like 5 processes running and you wanted to understand what happened after I wrote something to storage account, I made a Slack call and the Slack one failed and it came back with an exception. You can actually use the coloration ID that is generated from the response that came back as the exception, the failed state, as we call it, to track what happened and where it failed. So it captures it captures all the processes up to the point where there was a failure, and to give you the coloration ID back in the exception, so you can use that to track. So it's almost like how you do any exceptions today. When you get an exception, you have an exception ID that you can use to track the event. But when you customize it that way, there's 2 things you can do. You can say, I want to see all the process names that ran on the Azure Storage process ed. And I can look for ones that run under my process, or look for ones that run a different process. So I might have 5 configuration files in there. but I'm writing to storage account, but I'm writing to different storage containers in the account by using the same process. And this is the way you can uniquely identify which process you're using.
Okay.
Yeah,
And it looks like here, which is a nice, cool feature. Um,
you can create. So, and that's a very good point you mentioned. You can create a work item from there. So, for example, if we hit a custom event that's throwing an exception, you can actually create a ticket from there. And because it's well spelled out, like is
yeah.
the actual the code actually calls out all the exceptions right there and then. You can actually tie in the correlation ID, and someone can go into App Insights and search for that. So one other thing that you can do is that if you take that coloration ID in there, the GUID,
Okay. Oopsie. Just
if you copy that and
okay.
you go in and you open up the log. So we're going to go into logs now after you copy that.
Okay.
And if you open up logs, um, application insights logs, bottom right side somewhere. I think the logs are somewhere. Yeah.
Okay.
And if you just type in search, type search in there, then in quotes you put in the GUID. You don't put equals to, you just do search. Don't need any equals to at all. Yeah, you don't need to put equals to in there. Just take equals to out.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So this is a quick and clean way of actually getting to events. So this just tells you, this just tells you that you ran. This just tells you that it's looking at a specific transaction scope of a specific message that came through Azure Storage. And it just gives you the actual correlation ID that's tied into that step. The reason why you're seeing one entry in there because you only have one process running. You had 5 processes running inside of that config file. You see 5 different steps. And
Okay. And
this is
this works
yeah,
for, this is basically like a textual search of the entire
yeah.
log, right?
Yeah, it does. So what it does is that it's telling you this correlation ID ran. And if you look at the custom dimensions, yeah, that will give you everything. So what you did is I don't know what you ran, but you ran the traces. It looks like it gives you everything. So that's custom events. Custom events is actually what we use to capture information that's out of scope of the normal eventing system that's baked into application insights. You can capture things like category elapsed time. There's nothing like an elapsed time. I actually have that in my inside of part of the application. It tells you how long that process took to run. So if you have a long running process, if you're calling into a database, for example, and that process is taking long, and then you're making a message or doing another call after it, it will tell you in between that all the processes that you hit, how long each one took. So in this case, this took 13 milliseconds to write into a storage account, into Azure table.
Okay.
So the benefits of doing something like this is that you want to understand telemetry around how much data is coming into Azure table storage, and you want to understand how you have any kind of bottlenecks in terms of performance. You can actually build a chart around your elapsed time for um, a specific resource that you're depending on based on the actual process name, and then you can actually showcase that as a chart.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's one of the benefits of using actually going into your config file and actually putting a name that's specific to yourself.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this all looks great and sounds good. And thank you again for walking us through this application.
Right.
So as a final set of questions, I just wanted to help people understand, like, who is this meant for, right? Because obviously there are developers out there, and that can just build an Azure function that uses table storage and whatnot. And then like, if this was more business focused, then there'd be business people that I don't know how well they'd understand how to do all the steps that we did. So is this for more targeted towards developers? Is it
Yeah.
targeted towards business people or functional people or large enterprises that need to get things done very quickly? Who's the target of this product?
Yeah, so this target is mostly built and is actually we're targeting mostly developers, right? So a good example is that one of the challenges that we have today in the development industry is a way of standardizing the way you actually build out applications, whether it's on-prem or in the cloud. So normally, when you're onboarded, you're asked to go and read some go to some site and pull down code reviews or pull down coding standards and all the stuff that you have to follow to make sure you're following certain conventions. So what this does is this actually isolates or removes that process. So what we can do now is that in my coding standards now, I can actually just provide some code snippets of how you can connect to like this Azure Table Storage, for example. We just did that. And then we may have configurations that allow you to connect to blob storage. Maybe we have configurations that allow you to connect to SQL. If there's an event hub, we can have configurations for those and a service bus, and the list goes on. So what it means now is that a developer now can take the same boilerplate code that we have today and use that same boilerplate code to connect to SQL. And you don't have to do any additional coding. So for example, what we're showing here, if Ed tomorrow says that he wants to connect to a SQL database, we don't have to change the code at all. We just have to use the same code base. We don't even have to even change this RESTful API. We just, that GUID you're seeing right there,
Okay.
that same GUID is represented in the header of the actual RESTful API.
Yes, right here, right?
Yeah, so that ties in. So when we wire up the RESTful API, we actually, in the headers, we actually just pass in that GUID, and that GUID actually goes in the backend, pulls the configuration file that's specific to the setup that has been put it in there. And then it will just look at what information is put in there. So it's almost like a declarative way of actually isolating what's a storage account that you're calling. Now, if Ed made a copy of that and he wanted to create a new blob, he wants to create a new Azure table inside of Azure Table Storage, he will just call it a different GUID. He will go back to the same RESTful API, and then he will just provide that different GUID, and it's just create a different table inside of Azure Table Storage. So that's
So
what the separation is.
is there a way to apply rules to the transaction? So in this example that we've created,
Mhm,
we've basically taken um, taken this message and we've
mhm.
basically dumped it into a database as is. Is there any way,
Right.
is there a way for me to say, hey, okay, so let's say this API is the, you know, let's say it's a process and
Mhm.
it's the legal drinking age process, right?
Right.
Okay, so it's a process that's run every single night by my, in my organization, because I want to know who were the people who ordered drinks that
Right.
day by
Mhm.
by scan. I've scanned their driver's license information, so to speak, right? So if I had, let's say, a 19 here, right? Is there a way that I can apply rules, right? If I'm building my application now that's doing this thing using XenHey,
Mhm.
to say, hey, for in 19, I want to take this information, I want to take how much they spent, I want to maybe send it into a different system, or I want to run some business rules tied into it. Do you have that capability?
Yeah, you can. I mean, but you have to wire up a different process. So what that requires you to do is that we have to wire a process in like in this term, I don't want to get too technical. There's a process called XSLT, which does the transformation. I can look at the data, and that could be done before you hit the database or after recording the database. So if, for example, you record 19 in the database, which is what we're doing today in Azure Table, we can have a secondary process that will actually inspect the response that comes out of that table, which includes the actual row key plus the payload that you sent in. and then it can further analyze the data for certain specific pieces of information. It can tag it saying that this is 19, you're not, you're over, you're under 21, and then you can customize the type of tagging that you want to associate with that under 21, saying, okay, under 20, you're under 21, you're not allowed to do, you're not allowed to drink. Then you can send it over to another system that can then record that into the database. So you can actually call a table storage twice. You can actually go in the first time, write it to a table storage, then actually send the data out of that table storage into a filter mechanism. Then you can write into a secondary table storage that actually calls out that this person is not underage and cannot be drinking. So you can have two tables created that way. That's something you can do.
Okay.
And all that can be done without any additional coding. It could be done through configuration.
Okay. Okay, guys. Well, thank you so much, Obi, for taking the time to walk us through this. Once again, the product is called XenHey. As you can see, it's pretty amazing. All the things it can do certainly simplifies the process of taking data and putting it into storage, into various forms of storage, or sending that data in a structured way, where basically, as Obi mentioned, there's no, you don't have to deal with all the fragmentation that happens based on multiple people doing it multiple different ways. So Obi, where can they get access to this product?
Yeah, so as we did in the beginning, when you added the actual package, the package is a Nuget library, so you can easily just reference it through a Nuget package. So that's how you pull it in. The sample codes are already provided in the links in the chat, so we can include that in the chat as well, in the maybe links below. So if you search for XenHey,
So here's
yeah,
XenHey right here.
XenHey BPM core, the top one.
Top one right here.
Yeah,
And
that's the one we
then
want to use.
I will add the sample code in a link in the description.
Yeah, you can answer the two sample codes I provided, one for the configuration file and the other one for the actual sample code as well. I'll put that
Okay.
out there, right? Yeah. So you can start building your own apps. So I mean, you can get to the point where you're storing data into the backend. We'll follow up with another session to talk about how you can search data, not just searching regular JSON data, but searching complex JSON information and showing that inside of a result set.
Okay.
The next session.
So once again, thank you for watching. We bring you premium content, bring you premium applications and architects that can talk through some pretty sophisticated stuff as you're seeing. If you like the content we bring you, please obviously subscribe, like the video, share the video, and we will see you in the next one. Thank you.
Thank you.